She was delivered to him at sunrise, barefoot, silent, and bound by tradition meant to end a war. Everyone expected him to claim her. Instead, the rancher did something that would turn both sides against him. Before the story continues, take a moment to subscribe for more frontier tales like this, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. The dust had barely settled from the horses' hooves when Jacob Mercer saw them coming up the long road to his ranch. 6 riders. 3 from the tribe, 3 settlers acting as witnesses. Between them, walking, was a young woman wrapped in ceremonial cloth, her feet bare against the hard pan earth. Jacob stood on his porch, one hand resting on the post he'd carved himself 15 years prior. He was 43 years old. His face was leather from sun and wind. His hands were scarred from rope and blade and the kind of work that breaks a man down slow. He'd built this ranch from nothing, survived 2 droughts, and buried a wife who died bringing their stillborn son into a world that didn't want him. The riders stopped 20 yards out. The woman stood between them, not looking up. Thomas Whitmore, a settler who served on the territorial council, dismounted first. He was a heavy man who wore his authority like a badge. Behind him, Gray Hawk, an elder from the Cheyenne band that controlled the northern range, remained mounted. His face was stone. His eyes were calculation. "Jacob Mercer," Thomas called out, his voice carrying the formality of ceremony. "We come in peace, witnessed by God and tradition." Jacob said nothing. He watched the woman. She was young, maybe 20, maybe less. Her hair was black and long, braided with what looked like sage. Her face was turned down, but he could see the line of her jaw, the tension in her shoulders. "The council and the tribal elders have reached an agreement," Thomas continued, "to end the bloodshed, to establish trust between our peoples. This woman is offered to you, Jacob Mercer, as a gesture of goodwill and alliance. Her name is Morning Rain. She's of good family. She is yours to claim in the sight of all present." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jacob's gaze moved from the woman to Gray Hawk. The elder's expression hadn't changed, but his eyes were watching, waiting. This was how peace was made on the frontier. A woman exchanged. A bond formed through flesh and household. It was understood. It was expected. Jacob had seen it done before in other territories, other wars. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it bought a year or 2 of quiet before the killing started again. "She comes with honor," Gray Hawk said, his English slow and deliberate. "She is daughter of a warrior. She knows her duty. You will treat her as wife. You will give her a place at your fire." This is the agreement. Jacob felt the weight of every eye on him, the settlers, the tribal witnesses, the woman herself, though she still hadn't raised her head. He thought about his empty house, his silent table, the long evenings with only the wind for company. He thought about the lie this ceremony represented, that a human being could be currency, that loneliness justified possession, that peace could be bought with a woman's life. He stepped off the porch. The woman flinched slightly as he approached, though she held her ground. Jacob stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the dust on her feet, the slight tremor in her hands, the way her breathing was too controlled, the breathing of someone preparing for pain. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. "Her name is Morning Rain," Thomas said, impatient. "We've established this." "I'm asking her," Jacob said, not looking away from the woman. Finally she lifted her eyes. They were dark brown, almost black, and in them Jacob saw something he recognized from his own mirror, a person who'd learned to survive by becoming invisible. "Morning Rain," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken in days. Jacob nodded. Then he turned to face the assembled witnesses. "I thank the council for their gesture," he said, each word measured. "I thank the tribal elders for their trust. But I cannot accept this offer." The silence that followed was absolute. Thomas Whitmore's face went red. "What did you say?" "I cannot accept," Jacob repeated. Gray Hawk's horse shifted beneath him. The elder's hand moved to rest on his thigh. near where Jacob knew a knife would be strapped. "This is not a negotiation, Mercer," Thomas said, his voice rising. "This is a treaty obligation. Both sides have agreed. You were chosen specifically, you have land, you have standing, you're unmarried. This is how we make peace." "Not like this," Jacob said. "You insult us," Greyhawk said quietly. The quietness was worse than anger. "I mean no insult," Jacob replied, meeting the elder's gaze. "But I won't claim a person as property. I won't pretend a forced marriage is peace. Find another way." "There is no other way," Thomas shouted. "Do you know how long it took to arrange this? Do you know what we've risked? The raids have cost 15 lives in 3 months. 15. And you're going to throw away our only chance at stopping it because of some. He couldn't find the word. "Principle," Jacob finished for him. "We didn't come here for your principles," Thomas spat. "We came for your cooperation." Morning Rain hadn't moved. She stood between the groups, her eyes now fixed on Jacob with an expression he couldn't read. Confusion, fear, something else beneath it. "If you refuse," Greyhawk said, his voice still quiet, still measured, "you refuse the peace. You say our gift is worthless. You say our daughter is worthless. I'm saying no human being should be given away," Jacob said. "Then you make her shame complete," Greyhawk replied. "She has been prepared for this. She has accepted her duty. Now you tell her she is not even worth accepting." Jacob felt the trap closing. Refuse, and he insults the tribe. Accept, and he becomes what he spent 15 years trying not to be, another man who takes what he wants because he has the power to take it. "I'll offer her shelter," Jacob said finally. "Protection. A place to stay of her own free will, but not as property. Not as obligation." Thomas Whitmore laughed a harsh, bitter sound. "You think that changes anything? You think anyone will see a difference?" "I see a difference," Jacob said. "Then you're a fool," Thomas replied. He turned to Greyhawk. "I apologize for this. We'll find another solution." But Greyhawk was watching Jacob with an expression that had shifted, no longer stone, but something sharper. Calculation turning into something else. Suspicion, perhaps. Or recognition. "There will be consequences," the elder said. "I know," Jacob replied. Greyhawk nodded once. Then he spoke in his own language to the other tribal members. One of them, a younger man with a scar across his jaw, looked like he wanted to argue, but Greyhawk silenced him with a gesture. "She stays or she returns," Greyhawk said. "Choose." Jacob looked at Morning Rain. She was staring at him now fully, her dark eyes searching his face for something intention, perhaps, or truth. "She chooses," Jacob said. "She has no choice," Greyhawk replied. "She was given. She cannot be ungiven." The trap was complete. If she stayed, the tribe would see it as acceptance of the arrangement. If she returned, she would return in shame, having been rejected, a failure of the peace offering, a personal humiliation. Morning Rain spoke then, her voice still quiet but steady. "I will stay." Greyhawk's eyes narrowed. Thomas Whitmore exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Good," Thomas said. "That settles it. The arrangement stands." "No," Jacob said. "She stays as a guest. Under my protection. Not as a wife. Not as property. The distinction is yours, not theirs," Thomas said, gesturing to the tribal witnesses, "and not ours. As far as anyone is concerned, the agreement is complete." He remounted his horse. "You've made a mistake here, Mercer," Thomas said, looking down at him. "A bad one. People were counting on you to do the right thing." "I did," Jacob said. Thomas rode off without another word. The settler witnesses followed. Greyhawk remained a moment longer. He looked at Morning Rain, then at Jacob. "You think you saved her," the elder said. "You have not. You have only chosen which way she will suffer." Then he too turned his horse and rode away, the other tribal members following. Jacob and Morning Rain stood in the dust in silence. After a long moment, she spoke. "Why?" she asked. Because it's wrong, Jacob said. Many things are wrong, she replied. This is how peace is made. Then we need a better way to make peace. She studied him, her expression unreadable. They will not forgive this, she said. I know. You will be blamed for what comes next. I know that too. Morning Rain looked toward the departing riders, then back at the ranch house behind Jacob. Show me where I will sleep, she said. Jacob nodded. He led her toward the house, acutely aware that somewhere in the hills, men from both sides were watching, and all of them were angry. The first night, Morning Rain slept in the small room Jacob had built as a nursery 15 years ago. He'd never used it. It still smelled like fresh timber and dust. He gave her a blanket, showed her where the water barrel stood, and told her the door had no lock, because there was no need for one. You can leave whenever you want, he said. She looked at him with those searching eyes. To go where? She asked. He had no answer. That night, Jacob sat on his porch with his rifle across his knees and watched the horizon. He didn't expect trouble this soon. Anger needed time to organize, but he'd learned long ago that expectations were how men died. The stars were hard and bright above him. The wind carried the smell of sage and distant rain that would never arrive. Inside the house, he could hear the faint sounds of Morning Rain moving around, settling in, existing. He thought about his dead wife, Margaret. She'd been strong, practical, filled with a fierce certainty about how the world should be. She would have understood his refusal today. Or maybe she would have called him a fool. He'd never know. The next morning, he woke to find Morning Rain already awake, sitting on the porch step, watching the sunrise. Did you sleep? He asked. Some, she said. He sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance. I need to know something, he said. Did you want this? The arrangement? She was quiet for a long time. Want is not the word, she finally said. I was told this is how I serve my people. That my sacrifice would bring peace. That I should be honored. But did you want it? She turned to look at him. Does it matter what I want? Yes, Jacob said. She studied his face, searching again for that thing. She couldn't quite find some explanation for why he'd done what he did. I wanted to live, she said quietly. I wanted not to be killed. Beyond that, I did not think I had choices. Jacob nodded slowly. You have choices here, he said. You can stay. You can go. You can tell me to leave you alone. You can ask for help. Whatever you choose, I'll respect it. You cannot promise that, she said. You do not control what happens next. No, Jacob admitted. I don't, but I can promise how I'll act. Morning Rain returned her gaze to the horizon. They will come, she said. Both sides. They will demand to know what is happening here. They will want proof of the arrangement. What kind of proof? She didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. Jacob felt something cold settle in his chest. I won't, he started. I know, she interrupted. That is the problem. That is why they will come. The first visitors arrived 3 days later. 2 settler women, Margaret Sullivan and Abigail Hendricks, rode up in a wagon. They were both prominent in the small community, their husbands serving on various territorial committees. They brought food and fabric and the kind of determined cheerfulness that was actually interrogation. Jacob met them outside. We've come to meet your bride, Margaret Sullivan said, smiling too broadly. She's not my bride, Jacob said. The smile didn't waver. Well, your arrangement then. Is she settling in? Does she need anything? I'll ask her, Jacob said. He went inside. Morning Rain was in the kitchen, grinding corn in silence. She looked up when he entered. There are women here, he said. They want to meet you. You don't have to talk to them if you don't want. She set down the grinding stone and wiped her hands on her dress. A simple cotton dress Jacob had found in a trunk, one of Margaret's old ones that fit reasonably well. I will talk to them, she said. She followed him outside. The 2 settler women's cheerfulness became strained when they saw Morning Rain. They looked at her. Dress a dead white woman's dress. They looked at her hair, which she'd left unbraided. They looked at her hands, which bore no rings. "How lovely," Abigail Hendricks said, her voice tight. "You're adjusting well, I see." Morning Rain said nothing. "We wanted to welcome you properly," Margaret Sullivan said. "And to see how the arrangement is progressing." "There is no arrangement," Jacob said. Both women turned to look at him. "Excuse me," Margaret Sullivan said. "She's here as a guest, under my protection. Nothing more." Abigail Hendricks's expression hardened. "Jacob Mercer, do you understand what you're risking? The council arranged this treaty specifically to stop the raids. If you're not honoring your part—" "I never agreed to my part," Jacob said. "I didn't ask to be chosen for this." "None of us asked for any of this," Margaret Sullivan snapped, her cheerfulness gone entirely. "We didn't ask for our neighbors to be killed. We didn't ask for our children to be afraid. We asked for peace. And this was the price. This was their price," Jacob said, nodding toward Morning Rain. "Not ours. She's the one who had no choice." "She's one person," Abigail said quietly. "We're trying to save dozens. Maybe hundreds. Does that mean nothing to you?" Jacob felt the argument forming. The same argument he'd had with himself every night since Morning Rain arrived. The math of sacrifice. The brutal calculus of survival. But before he could respond, Morning Rain spoke. "I understand," she said, addressing the women directly. "You want to know if the peace will hold. You want to know if I have been claimed, if the agreement is complete. I will tell you, I am here, I have been given, but I have not been taken. Your rancher refuses." The two women stared at her. "Then the agreement is worthless," Margaret Sullivan said. "Perhaps," Morning Rain replied. "Or perhaps the agreement was always worthless, and we are only now seeing the truth." Abigail Hendricks turned to Jacob. "You need to fix this before it's too late." "There's nothing to fix," Jacob said. The women left angry. Jacob watched them go, knowing they would spread the word that the arrangement had failed, that Jacob Mercer had doomed the peace through stubbornness or cowardice or worse. That night, the first fire appeared on the horizon. Jacob saw it from the porch, a distant orange glow to the north, too large to be a campfire, too controlled to be wildfire. "That's the Morrison Ranch," Morning Rain said quietly from the doorway behind him. Jacob turned. "How do you know?" "Because that is what comes next," she said. "A message. A reminder that peace was offered and refused." "The tribe?" Jacob asked. "Maybe, or your people, making it look like the tribe. It does not matter. Blood will answer blood now." She stepped out onto the porch beside him. "I should tell you something," she said. "Something you do not know." Jacob waited. "I was not given to you for peace," Morning Rain said. "I was given to you for proof." "Proof of what?" "That my people could be trusted. That we would give up something precious, a daughter, a life, and accept the cost. And that your people could accept it, could take it, could treat me as property, and feel no shame." Jacob's jaw tightened. "That's a test," Morning Rain finished, "for both sides. To see if we would all agree that some people are worth less than others. That peace matters more than dignity." "Who decided this?" Jacob asked. "Leaders who want war more than they want peace," Morning Rain said. "On both sides. Men who profit from conflict. Men who need enemies to maintain power. Why would your elders agree to that?" "Because Grey Hawk is not just an elder," Morning Rain said. "He is a political leader. And there are those in my tribe who believe the old ways are dying, that we must fight or vanish. Offering me to you was their compromise, a way to show they tried for peace while ensuring peace would fail." "And if I'd accepted you?" Jacob asked. "Claimed you? Then I would have been evidence of submission. Proof that my people would surrender their daughters to save themselves. It would have shamed the warriors, driven them to fight. And when they fought, the settlers would say the peace was false, that we could not be trusted." She looked at the distant fire. "But you refused," she continued. "And now you are the proof of a different kind. Proof that the settlers do not want peace either. That even when offered a solution, you reject it. Your people will say you doomed them. My people will say you insulted them. And war will come anyway. Jacob felt the full weight of the trap settle on his shoulders. So either way, war was always coming, he said. Yes, Morning Rain replied. You only chose how you would be blamed for it. The fire burned through the night. By morning, riders brought news. The Morrison ranch was destroyed, 3 people dead, livestock scattered. No one knew who was responsible: tribal raiding party or settlers dressed as natives to justify retaliation. Thomas Whitmore arrived at Jacob's ranch that afternoon with 6 armed men. This is your fault, Thomas said without preamble. Your refusal to honor the agreement. They're saying it's an insult. They're saying we never intended peace. Maybe we didn't, Jacob replied. Thomas's face darkened. You self-righteous fool. You think you're better than us? You think your principles are worth 3 lives? I think those 3 lives were worth more than forcing a woman into slavery, Jacob said. She's not a slave, she's a wife. There's a difference. Is there? Jacob asked. When she has no choice? When she's given like property? She's one person, Thomas said, echoing the argument from the settler women. One person against the safety of hundreds. How is that even a question? Because that one person is standing right there, Jacob said, nodding toward the porch where Morning Rain watched silently. And she has a name, and she's human. And I won't pretend otherwise just to make everyone else comfortable. Thomas was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. You've started a war, Jacob, he said. I hope you can live with that. I didn't start it, Jacob replied. I just refused to pretend it wasn't happening. After Thomas left, Jacob found Morning Rain in the kitchen. He's right, she said, about the war. It is coming. It was always coming, Jacob said. You told me that yourself. Yes, but now it will be worse. Because both sides have something to prove, that they cannot be disrespected, that they cannot be refused. She turned to face him. I need to tell you the rest, she said. The part I have not yet said. Jacob waited. My mother was not Cheyenne, Morning Rain said. She was white, captured in a raid when she was young. She married into the tribe, had children, became one of the people. I am one of those children. Jacob's eyes widened slightly. The leaders know this, Morning Rain continued. Both sides. That is why I was chosen. I am proof that the 2 peoples can mix, that blood is not destiny. But I am also proof that such mixing is complicated, that identity is not simple. What does this have to do with the war? Jacob asked. Because there are those on both sides who want to prove that mixing is wrong. That blood determines worth. That people like me should not exist. She moved to the window, looking out at the empty land. If you had claimed me, I would have been evidence that white men can possess native women, that we are theirs to take. The warriors would have used my shame to recruit others to war. But if I returned unclaimed, I would be evidence that even mixed blood is not enough, that I am neither one thing nor another, worthless to both sides. So you were sent here to fail, Jacob said slowly. No matter what happened. Yes, Morning Rain said. I was sent here to be the excuse for war. And you, by refusing to cooperate, have become the other excuse. Who planned this? Jacob demanded. Who on your side? Who on ours? Greyhawk for my people. He wants war because he believes it is the only way to maintain tribal identity. If we make peace, we become part of your world, and he believes we will vanish. And on our side? I do not know names, Morning Rain admitted, but there are settlers who want our land, who see war as opportunity, who need conflict to justify taking what they want. Jacob sat down heavily. So we're both pawns, he said. Yes, Morning Rain replied. But pawns who can still move. The raids escalated over the next 2 weeks. A trading post burned, 4 settlers killed in an ambush. A Cheyenne hunting party found dead, mutilated in ways meant to send a message. Each incident was blamed on the other side. Each incident demanded response. And through it all, Jacob Mercer's name was invoked as the catalyst, The man who'd refused peace, who'd insulted honor, who'd chosen principle over pragmatism. Riders came to his ranch, demanding he fix what he'd broken. Some threatened. Some pleaded. Some simply stared at Morning Rain with expressions of contempt or pity or hunger. Jacob refused to send her back. Morning Rain refused to leave. "If I return," she explained, "I validate their plan. I become the failed peace offering, the proof that mixing blood is wrong. Better to stay and force them to explain why their plan did not work." "You're using yourself as bait," Jacob said. "Yes," Morning Rain agreed, "just as they used me as bait. But now I choose the trap." She'd changed over the weeks. The silent, submissive woman who'd arrived barefoot and bound was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, with a voice that didn't hesitate. "I know things," she told Jacob one evening as they sat on the porch. "I was raised in the tribal council's shadow. I heard things. I know which leaders profit from conflict, which traders sell weapons to both sides, which settlers have made deals with which warriors. Why didn't you tell anyone before?" Jacob asked. "Because I was property," Morning Rain said simply. "Property does not speak, but you changed that. By refusing to claim me, you made me something else. A person, a witness. That makes you dangerous," Jacob said. "Yes," Morning Rain agreed. "To everyone who wants this war." The attack came on a moonless night. Jacob woke to the sound of breaking glass and men's voices. He grabbed his rifle and moved through the dark house, his heart hammering. "Morning Rain," he called out. "Here," came her voice from the hall. She emerged with a kitchen knife in her hand. "How many?" Jacob asked. "4, maybe 5. They came from the east. Tribe or settlers? Does it matter?" She was right. At this point, either side might want them dead. Jacob moved to the window. In the faint starlight, he could see shapes moving around the house, preparing for assault. "They'll burn us out," Morning Rain said. "Not if we leave first," Jacob replied. He led her to the back of the house, to a small root cellar he'd dug years ago. It had a tunnel that led 50 yards out to the tree line, an escape route he'd installed after too many years of frontier violence. "Go," he said. "Follow the tunnel to the end. Wait for me in the trees. And you?" "I'll slow them down." Morning Rain's eyes flashed. "No, we go together or not at all. Morning Rain, I am not property to be protected," she said fiercely. "I am a person who chooses. I choose to stay with you." Jacob looked at her, this woman who'd been offered as a gift, who'd been refused, who'd somehow become more herself in the refusing. "Together then," he said. They never made it to the cellar. The front door burst open, and men poured in, 5 of them, faces covered with cloth, weapons drawn. Jacob raised his rifle but didn't fire. In the close quarters, a gunfight would kill them all. "Put it down, Mercer," one of the men said. His voice was familiar but distorted by the cloth. "Who are you?" Jacob demanded. "We're the solution to the problem you created," the man replied. "You should have taken her, should have done your duty. Now we have to clean up your mess." "By killing us?" Jacob asked. "By making it look right," the man said. "A tragic raid. The rancher who refused peace, killed by the savages he insulted. The half-breed woman caught in the middle. It tells the story we need. You're settlers," Morning Rain said suddenly. "Not warriors. You are white men pretending to be my people." The lead man pulled down his cloth, revealing his face. Jacob recognized him, Daniel Foster, a rancher from 20 miles south, a man with significant landholdings and territorial ambitions. "Smart girl," Foster said. "Yes, we're white. And yes, we'll make this look like a native raid. Because that's what people will believe. That's what they want to believe. And your deaths will prove that peace was never possible, that the only answer is force. You planned this from the beginning," Jacob said. "The peace offering, the arrangement. You knew I'd refuse." "We hoped you would," Foster admitted. "We know your reputation, your dead wife, your conscience. We needed someone who'd refuse, who'd give us the excuse we needed. And if I'd accepted? Jacob asked. Foster shrugged. Then we have found another excuse. But this was cleaner. The insulted tribe. The stubborn rancher. The war that couldn't be avoided. He raised his gun. Nothing personal, Mercer. You're just in the way of progress. The shot came not from Foster's gun, but from the window. The glass exploded inward, and Foster stumbled, a red bloom spreading across his shoulder. His men spun toward the window as more shots erupted, disciplined, accurate fire from multiple positions. Jacob dove for cover, pulling Morning Rain with him. Through the chaos of gunfire and shouting, he saw figures moving outside, warriors, tribal fighters, but also settlers, townspeople, men and women who should have been enemies standing together. The fight lasted less than a minute. Foster's men, caught between the attackers inside and the assault from outside, surrendered quickly. When the silence finally came, Jacob looked up to see Grey Hawk standing in the doorway, a rifle in his hands. You saved us, Jacob said, confused. No, Grey Hawk replied. She did. He nodded to Morning Rain. She sent word, the elder continued. Through channels we did not know she had. She told us what was being planned, who was profiting, how we were all being used. Behind Grey Hawk, Thomas Whitmore appeared, his face grim. We didn't believe her at first, Thomas admitted. But she had proof, names, transactions, meetings. She knew more about what was happening than any of us. How? Jacob asked Morning Rain. Because I listened, she said simply. Because no one watches what they say around property. Because I was invisible, and invisible people see everything. She stepped forward, facing Grey Hawk directly. You knew, she said to the elder. You knew I was being sent to fail. You allowed it. Grey Hawk's face was stone again, but there was something else in his eyes now, respect, or perhaps regret. I allowed it because I believed war was inevitable, he said. I believed we could not survive peace. I believed mixing would destroy us. And now? Morning Rain asked. Grey Hawk looked at Jacob, then at the assembled group, tribal warriors and settlers standing together, having fought together against a common enemy that wanted them divided. Now I am less certain, the elder said quietly. Daniel Foster was hauled to his feet, blood still seeping from his shoulder wound. You're all fools, he spat. You think this changes anything? There are dozens like me, hundreds. People who know that peace between you is impossible, unnatural. We'll keep fighting until one side or the other is gone. Then you'll fight alone, Thomas Whitmore said. Because the rest of us are tired of being used. In the days that followed, the truth slowly emerged. Morning Rain's testimony, backed by Grey Hawk's reluctant confirmation and evidence gathered from Foster's associates, revealed a conspiracy that stretched across both communities. Traitors selling weapons to both sides. Politicians using conflict to justify land seizures. Warriors and settlers alike who'd profited from the status of permanent war. It didn't end cleanly. Some conspirators escaped. Some denied everything. Some were arrested, some fled, some simply disappeared into the frontier. But something had shifted. The war that had seemed inevitable suddenly seemed less so. Not because peace was easy, or because trust had been established, but because both sides had seen the manipulation and resented it. Meetings were held. Real ones this time, without hidden agendas. Boundaries were discussed, trade agreements. Mutual defense against the men like Foster who wanted endless conflict. It wasn't peace, not really. It was more like a ceasefire built on shared anger and mutual exhaustion. But it was something. Jacob Mercer stood on his porch 6 weeks after the attack, watching the sunset paint the sky red and gold. The ranch was quiet. The silence was no longer oppressive, it was simply the sound of land at rest. Morning Rain emerged from the house, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She'd taken to making it in the evenings, a habit she'd adopted from watching Jacob. She handed him a cup and stood beside him, looking out at the seeing horizon. Thomas Whitmore came by today, she said. While you were in town, what did he want? Jacob asked. To apologize, and to ask if I would speak at the next council meeting about what I learned, what I saw. Will you? Morning Rain was quiet for a moment. I think so, she said. Someone needs to tell the truth. It might as well be the one everyone tried to silence. Jacob nodded. You found your voice. You gave it back to me, Morning Rain said. By refusing to take it away. I just didn't claim you, Jacob said. That's not the same as... It's exactly the same, Morning Rain interrupted. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw me as a symbol. That changes everything. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching the light fade. What will you do now? Jacob asked. You could leave. Go wherever you want. You're free. I know, Morning Rain said. I have been thinking about that. And? She turned to look at him, her dark eyes reflecting the last of the sunset. I think I will stay, she said. If you do not mind, not as property, not as obligation, but as, she paused, searching for the word. As a friend, Jacob finished. Morning Rain smiled the first real smile he'd seen from her. Yes, she said. As a friend. Jacob felt something loosen in his chest, some knot of guilt or grief or loneliness that had been wound tight for 15 years. I'd like that, he said. The sky darkened to purple, then black. Stars emerged, hard and bright against the void. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Another answered. Do you think it will last? Morning Rain asked. The peace? I don't know, Jacob admitted. Probably not. There's too much history, too much anger. Too many people who profit from conflict. Then why fight for it? She asked. Jacob considered the question. He thought about Foster's words, that peace was impossible, unnatural, doomed to fail. He thought about all the ways the world conspired to make men into property, women into symbols, people into excuses for violence. Because the alternative is worse, he said finally. Because even if peace is temporary, even if it fails, it's worth trying for. Because people like Foster want us to believe that conflict is inevitable, that we can't choose something different. And I refuse to believe that. Morning Rain nodded slowly. My mother used to say something, she said. Before she died, she said the world is not what powerful men say it is. The world is what we make it, through small acts of defiance. Defiance, Jacob repeated. Refusing to claim me was defiance, Morning Rain said. Staying when you could have sent me back was defiance. Fighting against the men who wanted war was defiance. And now we stand here, two people who were supposed to be enemies, sharing coffee and watching the stars. That is defiance too. Defiance against what? Jacob asked. Against the story they wanted to tell about us, Morning Rain replied. About who we are, what we're worth, what we're allowed to be. She finished her coffee and set the cup down on the porch railing. I was offered as a gift to end a war, she said quietly, but you refused to take me. And in that refusal, you gave me something no one else ever had. What? Jacob asked. The chance to choose my own story, Morning Rain said. She went back inside, leaving Jacob alone on the porch. He stood there for a long time, listening to the night sounds, feeling the weight of everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. The ranch behind him was no longer empty. The silence was no longer absolute. The future was uncertain, fragile, built on the smallest foundation of mutual respect and hard-won understanding. It wasn't the ending anyone had planned. It wasn't clean or simple or triumphant, but it was real. And in the harsh calculus of the frontier, where peace was currency and people were property and violence was the common language, real was enough. Jacob Mercer turned and walked back into his house, where Morning Rain was lighting lamps against the darkness, and for the first time in 15 years, he did not feel alone. The war would come again, someday. The peace would fracture, the old hatreds would resurface. But tonight, there was coffee and lamplight and the quiet presence of another human being who had chosen to stay. And that, Jacob thought, was its own kind of victory. Small, temporary, imperfect, but his and hers, and worth every consequence that would follow.
Thanks for watching this story till the end. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And before you go, check out these other amazing Western stories waiting for you next. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next ride.